Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Welcome to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Hello, everybody. How is it going today? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far and you've had a wonderful week. If you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, happy Saturday. I hope the sun is shining and you are feeling good. Where I am, it is finally sunny and warm. This is about our first kind of nice weekend that we've had so far. We've had a lot of a lot of rain, a little bit of snow, but it looks like the weather is finally starting to turn up. So I'm excited to finally get some of those UV rays because it always makes me feel good. So I hope the sun is shining where you are and you are feeling good today. I have an exciting episode for you. I'm super excited to share all this information because I think it is so relevant to all of us in our lives at different points. And I think it's a subject that is talked about, but maybe not enough and maybe not as deep as we should. So today's episode is actually kind of based on a really famous quote. And I decided this quote I have always it's kind of always been in the back of my mind. I've thought about it quite a bit, and I decided to dive deep into what this quote really means and kind of both sides of it, so I can give you kind of just all perspectives of it. I hope this episode is going to give you kind of a rounded perspective and to really let you see both sides of the issue and how you can use it to benefit your life, because that's what we're all about. We want to talk about benefiting and improving your overall health and wellness. So that's what today's going to be about. That's what every episode's about, right? So here we go. Today is all about, as you probably could see from the title, it's about comparison. And if you know the very famous quote that I am talking about, I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's from Teddy Roosevelt, and it says, "Comparison is the thief of joy." Just a short, simple, sweet quote, but there is so much depth that goes into it. So if you've heard this quote before, if you haven't, that's okay. I'm going to dive so deep into it and really give you some different perspectives, because some people still wholeheartedly believe that this is so true, that comparison is the thief of joy. And then other people will argue, no, it's not. Maybe comparison is healthy, and then there's different ways that, you can use it appropriately. And so today I'm going to give you both sides. I'm going to talk all about it. So hopefully you can learn of how to use comparison to your advantage to improve your overall health and wellness. Because as human beings, it is so natural to compare ourselves, whether that be in a positive or negative light. It doesn't really matter. It is just natural to do it. I think we've all compared ourselves to others at some point, or compared ourselves, compared our belongings to, or our jobs or our relationships, all different aspects of life. We all kind of make small comparisons, whether we notice it or don't. And I think some people rely on those comparisons for their happiness, or it affects their happiness more than it does for others. So we're going to kind of dissect all of that today. I have so many kind of important subjects we're going to talk about. So I am going to just talk about the difference between, is it the thief of joy, or, can we use it to our advantage? And so kind of under that umbrella, I'm also going to be talking about the social comparison theory. What is that theory? How can we overcome the social comparison theory, and how that manifests for each and one of us, because it can be different for all of us. So lots about the social comparison theory, which is going to lead me into my next important topic, which is social media, and social comparison through social media. So we're going to talk about kind of what that means in the social media world, as well, of course, to how to overcome it, some tips and tricks that you can do to stop your comparison and to fight that social comparison theory that I'm going to be talking about. And then, of course, I'm going to be talking about how we can use comparison as a healthy tool. Whether you believe that comparison is the thief of joy or that it's not, I am definitely going to round out today's episode with talking about how we can use it to better our overall health and wellness. And through all of these kind of intense subjects I'm going to be talking about today, we're going to talk a little bit about jealousy, we're going to talk about FOMO. So there's a lot of exciting information to come for today's episode, so I'm super excited to share that with you. So let me repeat that quote one more time from Teddy Roosevelt. Comparison is the thief of joy. So what this quote suggests is that making comparisons can be harmful and detract from our happiness. Now, there are lots of new research and studies that have come out about comparisons in general, and I think a lot of them do stem from this very famous quote from Teddy Roosevelt. But some new research suggests that the ways that we make comparisons may give us a biased amount of our own skills and experiences. So this is crazy. When I was doing research for today's episode, this just kind of blew my mind. I mean, I think I kind of realized it, but at the same time, I don't know, it still surprised me a little bit. But research has found that more than 10% of our daily thoughts involves making a comparison of some kind. Whether that's a negative or a positive comparison, 10% of our daily thoughts. And we all have so many thoughts circulating through our head at all times. And I found that 10%, it's quite a lot, especially if you're making those negative comparisons. You're not doing it in a healthy way for yourself. 10% is a lot when it comes to that. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head, because as soon as I found that percentage, that statistic, I was like, wow. I started to kind of reflect on, are 10% of my thoughts like related to comparison of some kind? And it's true. When you really try to kind of dissect and dive deeper into the things that you're thinking about every single day, a lot of it is comparisons. So when we want to feel better about ourselves, we may make comparisons to people that are worse off than we are. So, or we kind of think of ways that things might have been worse than they are. It's like, oh yeah, this happened, but it could have been worse, right? I will never forget. I remember I had just moved to a new city, and it was my first week there, and I rear-ended somebody in front of me in traffic, and I was so upset. My car was totaled. It was just awful, and it was just a bad start to my first week in this new city, this new adventure I was going on. And I was talking to my mom on the phone, and I was really upset, and we talked for a little bit, and then I remember we hung up the phone, and she calls me back 2 minutes later, and she goes, wait, I just want to say, hey, it could have been worse. You know, you only rear-ended a car that it wasn't a Ferrari, it wasn't a Lamborghini, it wasn't, a super nice, expensive car that I'm going to have to pay for now. It was just, an older car. It wasn't as bad. So that's kind of what this reminded me of, right? When we want to make ourselves feel better, we either compare to someone that is worse off than us, or that we believe is worse off than us, or, we think of ways that it could have been worse. So in that situation, yeah, it could have been worse if I rear-ended a Ferrari in front of me and had to, pay for the damages to that Ferrari. So there's a little example for you. But when we want to improve, we tend to compare ourselves to people who are better than we are. Now, this is especially effective if we compare ourselves to people we feel like we can realistically become. Now, this is kind of a fine line between a negative and positive comparison, because yes, we might look up to people. We might have somebody that we're like, wow, like I want their life. Like I really look up to them, the way that maybe it's their job or their relationships or just the person that they are. And it's like, wow. And we're comparing ourselves to that person, right? Because we're saying, wow, look at what they have and I don't. But it also can be healthy in a way because it can be motivating. So you see how this comparison can be the thief of joy, but it also can be motivating and inspiring for us to do better in our lives as well. It's all kind of about how we go about it. So when we compare ourselves to others, we do genuinely do this, though, from a place of weakness. Now, whether it's positive or negative too, usually this comes from a place of weakness because we see others at their best, or what we perceive them anyways, right? And we contrast that with where we feel we're at. Now, same thing when we're looking up to somebody with, wow, this person has such a lavish life, I look up to them, that's inspiring. Yeah, that's a positive way to look at it, but it's also coming from a place of weakness because you're saying, I don't have that. I'm not that person, and I want to be that person. So we're comparing ourselves as almost a positive and a negative way, right? So there's generally basically an enormous gap, usually, because deep down, we know that we're capable of more. Now, remember that saying that I said, that there's usually an enormous gap, because later on in the episode, I'm going to be talking about how we can fill that gap and what that really means. So make a little mental note in your head for that. But there's usually an enormous gap because deep down, we do feel like we can be better, do better, achieve more, whatever that is, but it is still coming from a place of weakness. So it's interesting how we rarely see ourselves as a work in progress, and we usually instantly get down on ourselves, that we're not on a higher level than we expect from ourselves, right? And if you are somebody that struggles with perfectionism, this is probably something that you deal with on an everyday basis. I definitely have some perfectionism in me where, things never feel like enough. I got to do better. I got to be more. I can do more, right? And it comes from a place of, I do realize I'm in a work of progress, but I want more, It's not always celebrating those small victories or really being grateful for where I'm at. It's, I can do better, I want more. So I think perfectionism really kind of plays a strong role if you are comparing yourselves in these negative ways, because you just want to be perfect, even though that it's just not realistic. So if you struggle from perfectionism, I think you're going to relate to a lot of the things that I'm saying in this episode, but I do think everybody can relate to this. So now on my next note, I want to talk about the social comparison theory. So what is this theory? What is it all about? How does it tie into our everyday lives now? And the social comparison theory was fathered in 1954 by a psychologist named Leon Festinger. Okay, and this theory states that individuals determine their own social and personal worth based on how they stack up against others. Okay, so in other words, if you were to look around and see that you're ahead of almost everyone around you, then you might feel pretty good about yourself. Hey, I'm doing pretty well. Even if you're that perfectionist or not, you are thinking, okay, I'm doing pretty good. Because you're looking around and everybody seems to be worse off than you are. However, if you were to look around and find that nearly everyone was ahead of you, that means you may feel behind. It may make you miserable, and it might make you feel worthless. And that's when we get into these very negative thought patterns, right? So you see how this comparison really can be the thief of joy. But we need to learn how to use it appropriately, so that we can fester it as something positive in our lives. So this social comparison theory, obviously, since it was fathered in 1954, they have done a bunch of research on it. It has grown. There are so many kind of aspects to it. And I believe that this social comparison theory is very strongly presented in our world today due to social media. And I'm super excited to be talking about that with you as well, because I think all of us love and hate social media. I think that if we use it appropriately, it can be an awesome tool. But when it's not used appropriately, it can deprive us from just feeling good about ourselves. And it is really, those news feeds, whether it's your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, I don't know what you're scrolling through, but that is it's comparison as we scroll through these photos and videos and we see other people, and there's so many sides to that, which I'm excited to jump into soon. But right now it is time for a little bit of a break. So when I get back, do not go anywhere, because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this social comparison theory. I'm going to be talking about jealousy, how this theory has kind of expanded since 1954. We're going to talk about how that manifests, which is all going to lead me into the very important subject about social comparison theory in social media, and how, of course, we can use it appropriately, use it better for us to improve our overall health and wellness. I hope this information is already beneficial for you. I hope you're kind of seeing both sides to it, and we're just going to continue to get deeper and deeper and really prove to you both sides of this quote. Is it true or is it not true? That's going to be up for you to decide at the end of the episode, but I'm excited to share all this information with you, so do not go anywhere. I will be right back.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
Welcome back to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Hello. Welcome back from the break. I hope you took some time to maybe think about how you feel about comparison so far. Is it the thief of joy? Can be used as a tool that is good for us to improve our overall health and wellness? Maybe you thought a little bit about that social comparison theory. Let's dive deeper, okay? Let's get more in depth all about this so we can talk about how it is going to, or how we can use it to improve our overall health and wellness. So let me repeat one more time. The social comparison theory states that individuals determine their own social and personal worth based on how they stack up against others. So when we stop using social comparison as a tool for growth, and we begin comparing ourselves to others in a negative way, some of these questions might arise for you, okay? So am I as pretty as she is? Am I as tall as he is? How does he or she, make so much more money than I do? How did they get that job that I want? Are they smarter than me? Are they more talented than me? Are they just all around a better person than I am? If you have any kind of these questions that have been floating in your head, whether they come up a lot frequently or not so frequently, I think all of us have said some type of question like this in our head, where we have compared ourselves to somebody else, where I am not enough. I am not that person, and so ultimately I am not enough. That person is more than I am. And this is where we get into that negative thought pattern, and where it all leads to that negativity, which can lead to the depression and feeling really, really down on ourselves. So this stems from that stressful thing that we all are guilty of, and that is jealousy, okay? It is easy to compare the ownership of things and fall into this self-destructive habit of jealousy. And that is never a healthy state of mind to be in, okay? Have you ever met a very content and happy, jealous person? I know I sure haven't. And some people are able to take their jealousy and use it as motivation and inspiration because it's jealous and I got to do better and I got to work harder. But that's still stemming from a place of weakness, and that's still stemming from a place of negativity on ourselves. So jealousy is not a positive feeling, but we all know that feeling in the pit of our stomach, okay? Whether we are jealous of somebody else's appearance or somebody else's job or somebody else's attention. Maybe it's in your relationship and you're jealous about your partner giving attention to somebody else or somebody else giving that attention to your partner. There's all these kind of different ways that jealousy can arise for us, and we've all felt a little bit of jealousy at some point in our lives, and you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach maybe you kind of start to sweat a little bit, you're getting worked up, and you just don't feel good. It's not a pleasant, comfortable feeling, right? So when we are using the social comparison as a negative tool, we're not using it for growth. This is where the jealousy arises, and jealousy can make us do things that are completely out of our character. Have you ever been super jealous about something and it just makes you nasty? Maybe you get really rude, or you get really defensive. Maybe you're just out of line of who you usually are as a person, right? Because jealousy can make us feel so many emotions and really heat us up that we turn into somebody that we're not. And it's just like when we're angry sometimes that we say things that we don't mean. And I think that jealousy is the same thing. When we're jealous about something, we can say things we don't mean. Maybe we are jealous of somebody just walking across the street and you're like, wow, I'm jealous of that person's body. But it comes from this place of weakness and anger. So then you're standing with your friend and you start talking badly about this stranger who you don't know this person, you don't know their story, right? But you are now talking badly and going against your character and who you believe that you are on the inside because of this jealous anger, maybe the resentment feeling inside of you. And so we all know that feeling, whether in all aspects of our lives, okay? And so we got to make sure that we are using this social comparison as a tool for growth, or else that nasty jealous feeling is going to arise inside of us. So since 1954, where the social comparison theory was fathered in, more and more research shows that people who regularly compare themselves to the people around them are more likely to develop depression, feelings of isolation, guilt, or remorse. So some even knowingly or unknowingly engage in these destructive behaviors. So that could be compulsive lying in order to maybe look better within a social group. Have you ever, I just over-exaggerated, right? I just over-exaggerated a little bit. And it's that compulsive lying because you wanted to make yourself sound better in that situation. So you just say, whether it's a white lie or you really over-exaggerate or whatever it is, you're trying to make yourself sound better. And that is all coming from a feeling inside of you that you're not happy with something in yourself. So you have to lie or over-exaggerate, whatever you want to call it, about something to make yourself sound better. Now, this can be a lie to the social group that you're actually saying it. It could be a lie, too, that you're telling to yourself. Maybe you don't say these compulsive lies out loud all the time, but you're telling yourself a lie inside of your head, and even though deep down you know it's not true, but when you start to actually believe these compulsive lies, it can really get us in this negative turn, and then we start lying to other people and over exaggerating, and then how do we keep up with all these lies? Oh gosh, what did I tell that friend group compared to what did I tell this friend group? And did I lie on my, to my boss, and then I said something different to my family? Like all of these lies, it all just turns into this big mess and we can't follow them, and the truth always comes out. That's just what it is. Whether you want to admit that or come to that realization, it will come out. Whether you mess it up yourself, or it'll come to get you in a different way because you'll be so tied up in all these compulsive lies that you don't even know your own truth anymore. And then we got a whole nother problem. So jealousy can really root to these negative emotions and destructive behaviors that we have to watch out for. So how does social comparison manifest? Now, social comparison is relatively common amongst most people, but how it manifests in each person is wildly different, okay? Like, so different. So some tend to silently judge the people that they compare themselves to. Maybe it's just in their head, right? These people tend to say things like, if I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth, I'd have that job too. Or they've had it so easy. They don't know what it's like to work a real job. This is kind of passive aggressive, right? You're kind of saying it. Maybe you're saying it under your breath. Maybe you're just saying it to your best friend. You're not going up to them and saying it, but that's how that social comparison is manifesting in you. It's that passive aggressiveness of just, I'm jealous. I'm comparing myself to this person, and they don't deserve what they have, right? If these sentences have ever come out of your mouth or you've heard somebody else say that, that's kind of where that's manifesting from. But some people manifest overly competitive or superior attitudes, which is resulting in kind of a chip on your shoulder. So these people may think that the whole world is out to get them, or that the chips are always stacked against them, right? They just can't win. Everything's out to get them, and they're playing the blame game. That is a vicious game to play, but social comparison really kind of brings out that blame game. We like to blame others or the universe or just it just always happens to me. Like, the odds are always against me. The world is always against me. Like, I can just never win because it's always against me, right? It's that negative thought pattern as well. So social comparison results in a lot of different emotions and mindsets, and many of those emotions and mindsets go unseen by others. So this is a problem that is manifesting within yourself. Maybe some people kind of see parts of your social comparison mindsets come out. Maybe with the people that you're closest to, you kind of let those come out a little bit more. But really, it's a problem that's inside of you that you have to deal with and figure out where that is stemming from the inside. It's so funny because as I do these episodes for you guys, I'm like, my hand gestures are just all over the place. I'm like pointing and going up and down, and I know you can't hear me, but I hope you understand these big hand gestures I'm making. I make myself laugh. Anyways, okay, so social comparison now, we kind of have how it manifests, what it's all about, kind of the different sides of it. Now, let's talk about how social comparison in social media. So today's connected culture, social comparison, I think, is at an all-time high, and social media is really making it harder and harder to avoid. Now, if you are aware of social comparison and comparing yourself to others and those negative and, kind of paths that you can go down, when we are more aware of something, it's easier to control those things, right? But when we are scrolling through social media for however many hours a day, we just get into this loop and we don't even realize that we're doing it. So as we scroll down our news feed, we're seeing, Becky went to Mexico for the 3rd time this year, and Josh has, he's the CEO of his own company, and look at her, she's lost all that weight, and it's all these comparisons, and you may not even be saying these out loud, but subconsciously you are registering these in, because if you have insecurities inside of you, your subconscious mind is registering this social media feed of other people and you're social comparing yourself. So it's a very kind of dangerous loop that we can get into. And so we have to understand that most people only share the highlight reels of their lives in social media, right? They talk about the outings that they have with all their friends, the beautiful foods they eat, and all the fancy drinks that they have, maybe their new car, their happy families, maybe it's a new job, the successes, the celebrations, all that world traveling, those adorable pets. Like, these are all examples of the good things that people put on their social media. And 9 times out of 10, people refrain from sharing their bad days. They refrain from their fights with loved ones, right? They refrain from the not so fancy dinners, like that ramen you had at dinner instead of that 3-course meal you had at the restaurant 2 days before, right? Like, they don't share their overdue bills, or, you know, what they did to get that job, or maybe they seem to have this amazing job, but really they're playing a lower role than they're kind of putting out there. And I think we are all guilty of making social media a highlight reel, because I think there's 2 sides to it, or a few sides to it, I guess, but we want people to perceive us as this person. And I think that's just human nature, that we want people to perceive us in a positive way, as if we are living our best life and we have all these lavish things, which, yeah, we're guilty of. And I think that comes from either, you know, some insecurities that we have, that, wow, we got to do better. We're doing that social comparison. So we kind of, you know, we just want to share our highlight reels to make ourselves look and feel better. That's kind of like that over exaggerating or the compulsive lying. Right? And then there's also maybe some people think, well, I don't want to share the negative things because I don't want to bring others down either. And I get that too, right? You don't want to, all of a sudden your Instagram feed is about the fight that you had with your husband or your wife for 3 days straight, and how, you know, like, that's something that we just don't want to share. We don't feel like other people need to know that. But we have to try to normalize, you know, all conversations on social media. Maybe you don't have to put, you know, the whole fight that you had with your spouse, but maybe we should normalize putting things that aren't always picture perfect. Posting that one picture that doesn't always show that it's, you know, if you have 10 million photos, I'm over exaggerating, but if you have so many photos of, you know, your happy little family, but on the inside, you know, you guys are really struggling, that's kind of putting out to that world the highlight reel of your life, when it's not really the truth. And so I think normalizing putting the truth on social media is a really great thing that we need to start doing, but there's always boundaries, right? Because there is things that people don't need to know. We don't need to share all the negative aspects of our lives, but we also don't need to share all the positive aspects of our lives either. So there's boundaries in everything, and I think social media really has, like, we really need to set stronger boundaries. And some people do and some people don't. I think everybody's a little bit different with that, right? So social media is a really big thing that kind of ties into social comparison in today's world. And I want to give you a little bit of a statistic again. It said that evidence is mounting that there is a link between social media and depression. So in several recent studies, teenage and young adult users who spend the most time on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any other platforms, they were shown to have a substantially, so from 13 to 66% higher rate of reported depression than those who spent the least time. Now, I'm not suggesting that social media platforms are to completely blame or that we should stop using them, but I think we need to set stronger boundaries. And, you know, we don't need to start airing our dirty laundry everywhere, like I said, right? But those boundaries are so important so that we can normalize a healthier social comparison and the truth that, you know, our lives are. Okay, it's time for another break, but when we get back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about social media and social comparison. I'm going to talk about FOMO. If you don't know what that is, you're going to have to wait till I get back to explain it to you, but I think we all struggle with FOMO at some point in our lives, and then we're going to dive deeper into maybe some better things that we can do, how we can use that social comparison as a growth tool. So lots of fun information to be shared still. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. Is comparison really the thief of joy? Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, this is all about kind of stemming from the quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy" by Teddy Roosevelt. And that is such a popular quote. It's short, it's simple, but I'm sure you've heard it before or you've seen it somewhere. And I think there's so many just kind of debates on it. So we are already halfway through the episode, and I hope you're getting a better gist of both sides to the quote and if it really is the thief of joy. And now I'm kind of going to dive deeper in how we can use it as a proper tool for growth, use it appropriately so that it doesn't have to be the thief of joy, and that we can use it to power ourselves, to help ourselves grow and evolve, because that's really what we're doing, right? We're always on our journey. We're always growing and evolving as human beings, and the more we become aware of these things, like the social comparison theory and how to use it appropriately, the better we can, improve our overall health and wellness and just our state of being, right? Our entire lives. And yeah, it's a really important subject. So I hope you're enjoying it so far. Let's dive back in. I was talking about social media, and how, in our connected world these days, social media is, it's bad for that social comparison theory, whether we are realizing it or not. I think it's kind of registering in our brains as we scroll through our feeds. And, I don't want to blame social media for anything. I think social media is so great. I think there's so many awesome things about social media, but we have to learn our own boundaries when it comes to what we are posting and sharing, what we are also digesting, right? What are we absorbing? What is going through our brains and making us feel certain ways, right? Because yeah, it's a highlight reel, and it is, and those things can make us feel down on ourselves when we feel like our life isn't up to par with somebody else's life on social media, and we want to, we stop loving ourselves because we're so caught up in what other people are doing. Now, we got to use it appropriately, and we can use it appropriately, but I think a lot of this negativity that does come from social media is coming from FOMO. Okay, and I think that kind of, when we see these highlight reels, we're getting this sense of FOMO. And if you don't know what FOMO is, it is the fear of missing out. Now, you can have FOMO in all aspects of your life. Like, I remember when I was in middle school, high school, and I had terrible FOMO that the weekends made me so anxious. It made me so anxious because, if I wasn't going to go hang out with my friends, or I wasn't going to be at the party that everybody was at, it made me, I had FOMO so badly that it made me sick to my stomach. I got physically ill from the fear of missing out. And 9 times out of 10, when you have this fear that you have to go to absolutely everything and be a part of everything, and you go all to these social interactions, but then you realize, wow, this is the same thing every single time, right? Not all of them are great memories. Maybe you're really not missing out on things. And so I think it comes from when we're younger, we have that fear of, I have to be involved with everything, and we don't let ourselves just be alone, and let ourselves, we don't realize how important sleep is, and proper nutrition, and just hanging out by ourselves, and maybe reading a book or watching a TV show with our family members. But back then you don't realize that, right? You just want to hang out with your friends and be involved with everything so you don't miss anything when you go to school on Monday. And you can have FOMO at all ages. I still have FOMO. I'm just saying it was a lot worse for me when I was in middle school and high school, and it really bothered me to be missing out on social interactions. But as adults, it doesn't matter whether you're 12 years old or 60 years old, you can have FOMO. And I think FOMO is very prevalent on social media because the factors that may kind of underline FOMO is the sense that others have better social lives than we ourselves do, right? It's that comparison again. So in the research, they found that people believe that they spend more time alone, go to fewer parties, and are a part of fewer social circles than other people, even including their close friends. So these researchers found that this happened in part because people compared themselves to highly visible, highly social people, so those social butterflies of their circles. And 9 times out of 10, those social butterflies are also posting all of those events on social media. Now, that's where you get the FOMO, right? So you see all these things going on, and you're like, I'm not there. I'm at home by myself. And instead of enjoying that time alone or enjoying your time with your family, you're left there comparing that my life isn't as great, or I'm going to be missing out on things and I'm going to be left out later on, right? Now, it's crazy because I wonder, people that have struggled with FOMO, how they felt during the pandemic. For me, one of the positive things that I experienced through the pandemic is overcoming my FOMO. And, we're not quite through the pandemic, and I'm sure I'm still going to struggle with FOMO when we're able to go back to more of our regular lives. But I've talked to a lot of people that struggle with FOMO, and during this pandemic, they didn't have that extra stress because nobody was going out, nobody was doing anything. So you had nobody to compare yourself to, right? Or to feel left out about. So it was like this anxiety relief or this stress relief for those people that struggle with FOMO, because I don't gotta stress about it. I'm not missing out on anything. So if that was an experience that you had as well, you should shoot me a message through our social media channels. I would love to chat about that, because I was chatting about that with a friend the other day, and it was cool how we kind of had the same experience, that, yeah, like my anxiety levels have gone down because I don't have FOMO, because I can't have FOMO right now, right? So if you had that similar experience, I would love to hear from you. But anyway, so the point is that if you're always allowing comparison to rule your life, then there will always be someone new in your life that you'll end up comparing yourself to. Does that make sense? So if you're always allowing comparison to rule your life, then there will always be someone new that enters your life that you're going to end up comparing yourself to. We have to break that destructive thought pattern, right? So, we can't catch up with the Joneses, and there will always be someone out there doing a little bit better than you. And if you could see my hand motions, I'm doing the air quotes, better than you, okay? But we can break the cycle, and we can overcome this social comparison trap that especially social media and all these things have kind of tied us into in our connected world these days. So I hope from this point of this episode that you have kind of realized that it's clear that who we compare ourselves to matters, and how we compare ourselves matters. And this is something, though, that we can control. So in lots of different research and different sets of studies, the authors found that when people were specifically asked to compare themselves to someone with more moderate abilities or to a relatively unsocial person, these effects of the negative comparisons went away. So if you've never looked at comparison as a tool before, I'm going to help you start looking at comparison as a tool now, because it can be a tool, right? We can look up to people that are like our mentors, or that we just admire. We're like, wow, like I love the way that person runs their business. Like I inspire to be that motivated and driven and successful in my own business one day. And like, if that's motivating to you, that is awesome. But that's because you have the proper mindset, and it all stems from our mindset, right? So we have to understand where our mindset is when it comes to comparison. So now I'm going to break down kind of what we can do to use it as a growth tool, because it doesn't have to be the thief of joy, especially in my opinion. And I think you've hopefully come to that realization throughout the episode so far that no, we don't have to make it a thief of joy. We can use it as a growth tool. We can use it appropriately. There are tools and things that we can do, and it's all about shifting that mindset, right? So let's talk about how we can use it appropriately. Now, I think there are two kind of basic, I shouldn't say they're basic. They're two main principles. They're kind of basic, but two main principles that we have to follow to kind of use it as a tool in our everyday lives. So, and I don't think that we can use it as a tool in our everyday lives if we don't use both of these principles, okay? They have to kind of go simultaneously. They have to work together. So there's been some research throughout the years that came out of Harvard, Stanford, came out of UC Berkeley. This all came out on the science of human flourishing, that you will invariably find references to gratitude. So grateful people are happy, and extremely grateful people are extremely happy. Now, I'm sure you've seen this or heard this. Be grateful for what you have. Be grateful. Write down your gratitudes. But seriously, there is research that when you are grateful for what you have and where you are and the person that you are today, you are going to live a happier life, okay? So what's awesome about all this research is that they have found simple, interventions that can trigger these powerful feelings of gratitude, which will at the same time boost those happiness levels. So if you deliberately increase your feelings of gratitude, you will naturally make yourself feel happier. And no other outside resources are needed. So you don't need that outside validation from anyone, from anything. It's all coming from inside of you because you are truly grateful for where you're at, what you have, and who you are today in this moment. So you don't have to get a better job or a nicer car or a newer shiny thing. You don't need anything but time to think and to be grateful, because time is so precious and all we have is right now in this moment. And if you can just take the time to be grateful, that is going to ultimately increase your happiness, your overall health and wellness. Okay, so that is the first principle. Use the skill of deliberate comparison to spark your gratitude level. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to talk about the second principle before I dive into that, because I think they need to be used simultaneously for it to really work. So the second principle is use the skill of deliberate comparison to restore your humanity. Okay, so do you see how this is important to kind of use them together? If you were to deliberately compare yourself to someone less fortunate than yourself, you would be setting yourself up with your own kind of feelings of pride, which will in the future become a vulnerable point for you. So if you use the skill of comparison to spark your gratitude levels, then you do something about it in a way to help others. So you can immediately self-start kind of that upward spiral going to the uphill path, climbing that mountain at the same time while avoiding the pitfalls of pride and arrogance. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Let me repeat that kind of one more time. The two principles: use the skill of deliberate comparison to spark your gratitude level, and then use the skill of deliberate comparison to restore your humanity. So you want to use your comparisons to find those things that you are grateful in life, while also restoring your humanity. So you want to, so you're comparing yourself to somebody else, and then it's sparking that gratitude inside of you. Wow, well, I have this. I am grateful for where I'm at and the job that I have right now, or the hard work that I've put into my body image and how I feel about my appearance. And then, that's kind of restoring your humanity, and you're thinking, okay, how can I use the things that I'm grateful for to help others that are struggling, right? That need that extra help. And so think of everything that you have and allow that to fill you with a sense of gratitude. And gratitude is realizing you are the recipient of deliberate kindness. And kindness is what makes our world go round. So whoever or whatever you give credit to as for allowing you to live where you live and in what day and age, you just got to recognize that you have received incredible conveniences not available to so many other people. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, you probably have a phone or a computer or something that you can listen to these podcasts on, right? And other people don't have that convenience. They don't have internet connection. They don't have the availability to educate themselves through podcasts and articles online and just the internet in general, right? So when you really take in just even things like that, did you think about how grateful you are to have a phone and headphones right now to listen to this and to educate yourself better and to better your overall health and wellness? Well, others don't have that opportunity. So you kind of want to take that and restore your humanity, and how can I help others? So I think a great practice, which I'm sure you've heard this before, is just keeping a gratitude journal. It's something that I like to put into my everyday morning routine. I love to write down 3 things I'm grateful for, and I don't want to be surface level, because I'm grateful for, a roof over my head, a food on the table, and I'm grateful for my family and friends. And I think those are great things to be grateful for, and I am very grateful for them, but I want to dive deeper. So what I try to do when I write my 3 gratitudes is I look to the day before. I don't care if it was a bad day, a good day. I don't care if it was a Monday, a Tuesday, a Thursday, a Friday. It does not matter. I look to the day before and I say, okay, what am I grateful from the day before? And something very, very specific, okay? Maybe it was you're grateful for the silly joke that your daughter, your son told you when you picked them up from school and it made you smile. Maybe you're grateful for that little burst of happiness, of joy in your life. Maybe you're grateful for the person that held up in the door for you when you had your hands full of groceries. Maybe you're grateful. There's so many little things that you can be grateful for that dive deeper than just, I'm grateful for the food on my table and I'm grateful for my friends and family and all those things, because we are grateful for them. But let's dive deeper and find just those little moments that we have in our days that we can be grateful for, and that can help with this comparison and to, get in that better mindset when it comes to comparing our lives and ourselves to others or the things around us. Okay, it's time for one more break, and then I'm going to round off today's episode with more things that we can do to use comparison as a growth tool. I have so many good ones still, and very, very important ones. I am going to be finally talking about how we can fill that gap that I mentioned previously in the episode that I told you to take a mental note for. I am talking about all the important things of how you can use this as a growth tool. So do not go anywhere. I will be right back.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, my lovely GSMC Health and Wellness listeners. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. We are in the last stretch of today's episode, and I have all the most important information coming for you right now of how we can use comparison as a growth tool. There's so much to share, so I'm going to hurry up and jump right back into it for you. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. I hope you're writing down some notes or some mental notes, and this is really kind of resonating inside of you because I love talking about this. So here we go. Okay, so I was talking about keeping a gratitude journal and how we can kind of dive deeper and find those deeper gratitudes and the little moments that we have in our everyday life. And so when we stop comparing and contrasting every little fortunate thing in your life that you have in comparison, you will feel less inclined to whine or complain, right? So if you've got an amazing life in comparison, you've got it so good, and this is kind of where you use the second skill to start spiraling up now, right? So you now realize someone else is in pain, okay? So you wrote down your gratitudes. You said, yeah, I took, those comparisons and I found what I'm grateful for. And then you realize, okay, now someone else is in pain. Someone else is struggling. How can I help? And so when we get to this point of using comparison as a growth tool, think about what you can do. There are so many ways to get involved, to help one another. There are, relief organizations and all these different things. Maybe you just need to reach out and check in on somebody or just help where you can, right? It depends. But I think the key to this is compassion. We have to have compassion. And compassion literally means to suffer with someone else. So feel their pain and do what you can to help right now. And that's how you kind of take those principles and you put them into action to use it as a growth tool for you. So there you go. Those are kind of I think, my really big main points of using those principles and putting them into action for the comparison tools. But now there's lots more to share too, okay? So when we are comparing ourselves, it can be easy to just kind of subconsciously do it, like especially if we're scrolling through our social media and stuff, right? So just recognize that you're likely using an unrealistic target when you are evaluating yourself, and then you have to adjust accordingly, because we will compare ourselves. It is natural. It is just human nature, whether it's on social media or a person walking down the street, you're going to compare yourself. But if we can kind of realize and recognize, wow, like that is an unrealistic, that person is not me. They're living a completely different life, it's completely different. And when you can come to that realization and truly believe that, it helps you release the negative comparison thought patterns, right? We can also just consider what you're trying to achieve when you're making a comparison. So if you're trying to become a better cook, comparing yourself to your most, cooking show ready friend is only useful if you focus on the ways that you could become more like them and the tools that they use, and how can you incorporate that into your cooking, right? Do they take classes? Do they use fresher ingredients? Is it sharper knives? Like, I don't know, right? And so if you're using that comparison to find ways and tools that you can better yourself, then it makes it a positive comparison. It makes it a better thought pattern for yourself. Now, this one's really important that I'm going to talk about next, and that is embracing an abundance mindset. I'm going to do an entire episode on abundance mindset. I've been really diving deep into abundance mindset in my own life, and there's so much to it, but I want to give you kind of just the gist of it to help you with today's episode. So, when we can overcome negative social comparison, we have to focus on an abundance mindset, which is, of course, the opposite of a scarcity mindset. So the scarcity mindset is a self-limiting belief that tells us that there is not enough to go around. So let me give you an example here. If somebody gets a high-paying job, the thought might be that there is one less high-paying job that you can have. If someone earns a raise, there is now less money for you to get. Okay, does that make sense? That's the scarcity mindset. So if someone buys something you've been longing and saving for, you might feel that surge of FOMO. Oh my God, I'm missing out on that. And maybe you better hurry or there won't be any left later. So in reality, there is often more than enough to go around. And when we focus on scarcity, we stop rooting for those around us, and we are putting out that negative energy into the universe. And we're saying, oh, darn, Jack, he got that promotion. I wanted that job. And this type of thinking really puts us far too much focus on the negative and causes us to compare ourselves to other people. So you see how this works? And instead, we have to switch to an abundance mindset, and we have to tell ourselves there is an unknowable number of opportunities for my future. There could be 100 better jobs or promotions that cross my path in the coming weeks or month. So instead, use those words and those thought patterns inside of your head and congratulate Jack on his new big promotion, or that person that you're saying, they took it before I could, right? There's not enough. And a really strong tool that you can use to switch from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset is to always give what you feel like you're lacking in your life. So if you feel like you are very poor and you don't have a lot of money, give some money to a charity or to somebody that needs it more. When you are generous with what you want out of life, you're going to receive that. So if you think that you are in a scarcity mindset when it comes to love and you want more love and affection in your life, then give more love and affection, because there is more than enough to go around. And I can get so deep into this. Like I said, I will do an entire episode for you on the abundance mindset, but I think it's a really important tool to think about and to kind of register in your brain that we have to switch from that scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset so that we're not in that negative comparison thought pattern. Okay, so now I want to talk about what I mentioned earlier in the episode, filling in the gaps. And I think that's what really today's episode is all about, in, kind of on the upward spiral, if you will. So when we look inward, that's where we're going to get all of our answers. So when we are comparing ourselves and it's coming from that place of weakness and it's this person has this because you're feeling that way because you feel like you don't have that, right? You're missing that. There's a gap in your life that you are missing. So when you find yourself constantly comparing to others and wanting others' lives or, their job or their body or whatever it is, it's because there is a gap in your life that is not being filled, okay? You are not fulfilling every single part that you need to. So we've all felt it before, that overwhelming sense of jealousy, the envy, the FOMO, and where does this all come from? And I truly believe that jealous and envy come from these gaps in our lives that we feel like we are missing, even if we don't realize like we are missing them. So when we see someone else receive something or do something and we feel negatively about it, it's because we wanted that thing that they have, or we are missing that thing that they have in their life. It's that gap that we need to get filled. So feeling jealous is okay because it means that you want more from life. So we can switch it, right? Jealousy is a very negative feeling. It makes us feel really gross. But if we look inward to ourselves and we're saying, okay, where is this jealousy stemming from? Do I need to work harder at my job? Do I need to put more effort into it? Do I, really need to get back on track with my fitness routine? Whatever it is, you got to fill that gap that's in your life. And so it can be a positive thing to feel that jealous if you're able to have the proper mindset to look inward. And when we are comparing ourselves just in general, and you catch yourself and you say, oh, I recognize I'm comparing myself, look inward and say, what am I missing? What gap am I trying to fill by comparing myself to this person? What am I missing, right? So when someone else got, what you wanted and now you need to get that too, the problem is we often don't take the time to analyze our feelings and look inward. So then it makes us feel envious, mad, upset, jealous because someone got what we wanted. So don't just accept these emotions, instead use them to identify the gaps that are in your life. Does that make sense? That is probably my most important thing that I can say for today's episode is fill in the gaps. You have to look inward because comparison comes from a stem of weakness. It comes from a place that we want more. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting more. I think we just need to look inward and see where that's coming from. So social comparison is nothing new, okay? It's not social media's fault. I think sure, the exposure to the networks that we have and the people that we see, it can increase the opportunities we have to compare ourselves. I think that's inevitable, especially when we can, we have all these opportunities to compare ourselves negatively to others or to other situations. But I promise you that shutting down your Facebook account or your Instagram or your TikTok, it's not going to help you stop comparing yourselves to others. Facebook or not, you're still going to compare yourself to your colleagues, the people maybe at your church or the people down the street, just the waitress at the restaurant you're eating at. You're still going to compare yourself. So, limiting your exposure to social media can certainly help reduce these negative or sad feelings that are caused by comparison. But it definitely can help, but it's not going to fix everything. And because you will still see these people in your real life. And so I think that what really we have to do is look inwards and develop that abundance mindset for ourselves and get away from that scarcity mindset, right? Really consider, what are we trying to achieve when we are making this comparison? What are we missing in our lives? And really recognize that a lot of the things we compare ourselves to and that we get ourselves feeling so down about is unrealistic, right? And so this all ties into the main two principles, and that is to use the skill of deliberate comparison to spark your gratitude level, and to use the skill of deliberate comparison to restore your humanity. So find that compassion within yourself and find ways that you can help others, count your gratitudes and realize how many amazing things you have in your life now, and then use that to restore your humanity and see where you can help somebody else. And I think compassion is really important for others. It's also important to have some self-compassion as well. So compassion in general can really help you outlay these two principles easier and better, use it as a stronger tool, I guess, if you will. So I hope this is making sense to you. I hope that you kind of have a better gist of both sides, and maybe you do have that answer to the question now. Is comparison really the thief of joy? I don't think it is. I think that we can use these tools that I've explained in today's episode to, focus on sincere and meaningful gratitude, to foster that abundance mindset, to celebrate the people around us, to help others around us, to interpret, our emotions as a way to fill the gaps in our lives, right? You're going to be well on your way to living a happier and more fulfilled life if you do this, because comparison's inevitable. We're humans. It's human nature. We're going to compare ourselves. So when we focus on those good things, we can make that real difference for ourselves. It's all about that mindset shift that we can make, and that's how we're going to better our overall health and wellness when it comes to comparing ourselves. So let's just do a quick review. Just a real quick one to kind of sum everything up that we went through today. Remember that research has found that more than 10% of our daily thoughts involved making comparison of some kind. So now that you are aware of that, try to maybe be very aware of it and say, wow, are 10% of my thoughts comparing myself to others, and how you can switch that and get that percentage lower, right? We talked about the social comparison theory, where that manifests. Does it manifest for you? How does it manifest for you in certain ways? Because I think everybody's a little bit different. Does it come from this place of jealousy and envy? Are we passive aggressive? Is that how it's manifesting in our lives? Are we compulsive liars when it comes to the social comparison that we manifest? So these are all things that are really important to reflect on. How does social comparison work for you in social media, and how can you set those boundaries, right? Do you, maybe need to set certain times for yourselves to be on social media and to be off social media? Are there certain people that you need to mute so that you don't see them on your news feed? Do you have FOMO? Do you need to figure out how you can, better your FOMO and realize that staying in or not being always that social butterfly is okay and can actually better your overall health more than, going to every single function possible. So these are all things that we kind of want to reflect on from today's episode. And I hope, if you haven't already, I hope you start a gratitude journal. I hope you focus on, living in an abundance mindset and finding compassion for others and yourself, restoring that humanity in you, because we can take any of these negative comparison emotions and we can turn it to something positive. And I think that is such a beautiful thing about life, that we can shift our minds, the way that our brains are wired, and we can better our overall health and wellness. So there you have it. That is today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Make sure you head over to our social media channels. We have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Give those a like and a comment. If you want to shoot me a message, you have a question, you want to talk about any of the concepts that I talked about in today's episode, I would love to hear from you and chat with you. So shoot me a message if you feel so inclined, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review, because it helps out a ton. I definitely love reading those reviews. They make me feel good inside. So thank you so much for listening. I cannot wait to share more awesome information with you on how to better your overall health and wellness next time. Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.